Hello, and thank you for having me. My name is Kenny Blocker. I'm the Deputy District Manager. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about what's under my portfolio of management. And they consist of several different departments: the Office of Management and Budget, Finance, Utility Billing and Collection Services, Bonds, Purchasing, Utilities, and NSCUD, North Sumter County Utility Dependent District, and Sanitation. So I want to go over a few of these departments and kind of give you a little bit more detail about them. The Office of Management and Budget is under the leadership of Barbara Kays. And the total budget for FY 2021 consisted of 53 funds within all the districts, and it was approximately $358.4 million. They consisted of all the numbered districts 1 through 13, the amenity funds, and other funds as well, such as safety, the general fund, and utility funds, to name a few. There's a process that we go through to make sure everything is very transparent and open for all residents to be a part of the consideration of the budget, as well as every district supervisor. So the budget process basically starts in March, and it goes through some public workshops in March through May, and then it continues to be reviewed until the proposed budgets are approved in June, and then those budgets are then finalized in September. So all during the summer months, those budgets are being refined to make sure we are being the most efficient and effective with every dollar that comes into the districts. So the numbered districts are the main ones that we look at as far as their general operating funds. And how are they funded? They're funded through maintenance assessments. So the maintenance assessments is a non-ad valorem assessment paid by the numbered district residents for the operations and maintenance of the district and its infrastructure. That is the main revenue that comes into every numbered district, the residential districts. So how are they determined? During the budget process, each numbered district board determines the assessment amount based on the annual operating needs and planned future needs for each individual district. These fees are then calculated considering the amount of revenue needed and distributing that amount to the owners based on the unit's acreage and number of lots. So it's all fair and consistent. So there's a calculation that is done, and this calculation is the same calculation that is used for the bond assessment. So we are very consistent and transparent with each of the calculations for every maintenance assessment and bond assessment. This example here talks about a maintenance assessment. And you can see, for example, this is an example from District 12. District 12's total assessable acres is 1,202.59. That's the assessable acreage in District 12. So we take the unit in Lantana and DeSoto Village. That assessable acreage is 11.06. They have 78 lots. So the total amount that was billed was $3,747,850. So the calculation is such that that assessable acreage for that unit in Lantana for the DeSoto Village was 11.06, divided by the total assessable acreage to get your proportionate share, and then multiply that times the total budget. And then you can see that that assessment for those that unit in Lantana is $441.90. So that is the annual maintenance assessment, and that is the calculation and how it is done each and every year, and it's very consistent and the same as with the bond assessments. So the next item I wanted to talk about department is the finance department, and that is under the leadership of Ann Hochsprung. So they work hand in hand with budget. So finance does a multitude of things. They do all the general accounting services for all the districts. They have internal controls and safeguards. They do cash flow management. They do all the monthly financial statements and the analysis. So each month, every board receives a monthly financial statement so they can stay abreast of all their financial issues, concerns, making sure they're on budget. They do all the accounts payable. So every week there is a payable run to all the vendors that we do business with. They do all the utility and amenity billing and customer service through that arm of finance. And they do all the bond and maintenance assessments, working with the local tax collector and assessing those each and every year. So they also do cash flow management. So each week they do a weekly cash flow projection to know how much cash that we're going to need to effectively pay for all the accounts payable. And on the payroll weeks, there is payroll every other week. So they make sure there is an ample amount of cash to be able to make sure all the weekly invoices and the payroll every 2 weeks is paid. They also prepare the monthly financial statements, as I said earlier, so that is provided to all the board supervisors, as well as any residents who may wish to receive them. They're very concise, transparent, and they give a high-level summary of the district-wide financial results. Each year, to make sure that everything is being done appropriately and accounted for correctly, we have an external audit. and that is per the Florida statutes. We must have an audit. Each year, Purvis and Gray is an auditing firm out of Ocala that comes in and does our annual audit. So typically, in July, they come out and do an in-depth review of all the internal controls, and they do some testing. So they sit down and do some testing with accounts payable, accounts receivable, et cetera, to make sure everything is in fine working order with all the controls. They come back then in December and January to do all their final field work and audit work and start preparing the actual audit to present it to each of the boards. So in February, typically those audit reports are presented to each board, and then annually it is filed with the state of Florida, all the disclosure agents, trustees for all the bond indentures, and then of course the annual financial report is disclosed and filed with the state of Florida. So every year we have a complete financial audit to make sure everything is appropriate and presented to the boards for the review. So also in finance, there is utility billing and customer service. So they bill for all the 4 district-owned utilities. They also bill for the privately held utilities. They generate about 69,000 bills every month. They take about 3,500 phone calls. They also transition all the new home sales and the pre-owned sales to actually generate those transitions for refunds for overpayment based on amenities, based on the time they sell, and also get people back on board for the new homes. And there's also miscellaneous billing for commercial assessments, room rentals, property damage, and gate cards, et cetera. So just remember, they produce all those billing each month for whatever those needs may be. Also in the bonds, so finance is responsible for issuing the bonds, as well as making sure the bond assessments are done correctly. And they're also responsible for being your first line of defense when you want to pay off your bond. You can come into the finance office and pay those bonds off, and they are assessed each year through the property appraiser as a non-ad valorem assessment. Concurrently, they also do the investment management services. So within finance, they also manage all the cash. Like I said before, they have a weekly cash projection. They know how much cash is going to be needed for accounts payable, then every 2 weeks for payroll. So other than that, they then start looking at how to generate additional income through the investment. So we have 2 investment policies. We have the short-term fixed income investment policy, and we apply this safety, liquidity, yield principle to that. Those are inherent in what we do and making sure that we are always safe with the money. We always say it's very liquid. Then we look at yield. So where do we put those dollars? So locally, we use our operating bank account that is under Chapter 280 public depository. They have to be a qualified public depository. And then we also use a lot of local government investment pools. We use 4 of them. We use Florida Fit, which is an enhanced cash pool. We use Fligget, which is a long-term 1 to 3 type of local government investment pool. Then we also use 2 what I call daily pools, Florida Class and FEITF, or Florida Palm, the new name they go by. And those are stable net asset value, where the previous ones, Fligget and FLIT, is floating net asset value. So we use all these different products to help increase income into each revenue stream for each numbered district and residential commercial district. We also have a long-term investment portfolio in addition to those. So we look out plus 5 years to see if there's any dollars we can pick up by investing in the long term. The Investment Advisory Committee is the committee that oversees all this along with the department, the district. And then the long-term investment portfolio is managed under a separate investment policy, which looks to basically return dollars back to the districts that is over and above CPI or inflation rate. That investment portfolio is a mixture of 60% equities and 40% bonds. So the IAC did approve that type of portfolio back August 2014, and we look to achieve the results to help offset any type of inflation, like I said. And it's been very successful, and all districts participate in this investment portfolio. So the next district, the department under my purview, is purchasing, and that is under the leadership of Mark LaRock. So some of the things that the purchasing department is responsible for is all the competitive solicitations. So there are several different types of competitive solicitations. There are invitations to bid, which basically is a hard bid. You receive an ITB, we call it. So you would bid out some type of commodity or service, and that would just be a hard bid. They issue a bid based on the service that is needed to be provided. There's a request for proposal. The request for proposal is a multitude of items that are reviewed to make sure that they are receiving a good product. It could be based on a number of criteria, not just price, not just cost. They look at the experience of the contractor providing that service. So there's a whole host of other evaluation selection and criteria based on the request for proposal to make sure we're getting a product that we want, but also making sure that we get the quality. Sometimes price is not the only criteria that we look at. We also look at the quality and making sure that the contractor can provide those services in a timely and effective manner. Another solicitation is request for qualifications. These are much done for professionals, whether it be attorneys or engineers or architects. You're actually requesting for them to give you their qualifications on what they can provide for you and the services that they can do for the districts. And then you have requests for information where you just want to solicit and see what's out in the marketplace. You put out a request for information and receive information to then go out to bid. And then, of course, competitive solicitations over $50,000 have to be done either by one of those four mechanisms: invitation to bid, request for proposal, request for qualifications, and request for information. It is open and fair to all vendors. It is publicly advertised, and it must be done in the sunshine, and it also then must come back to each board for their approval over $50,000. Another advantage that the purchasing department takes advantage of is piggybacks and using consortiums or co-ops. And by piggybacking, it is a unique type of tool that they can use in their toolbox to solicit a vendor who has already been awarded a product or a service at another governmental entity. So they've already been through the solicitation process, and we know that we've got the best price or best service we can obtain without having to go through the same process again. So we would use a piggyback to then piggyback off a contract from another government agency to obtain those economies of scale. You can also use consortiums to do the same thing, and co-ops, because they've done all that type of legwork and background and awarded the best possible contract they can to those individual vendors or service providers. So we can also piggyback on those as well to obtain those economies of scale. So then we issue purchase orders in different denominations, and then based on the type of the amount of that purchase order, then that also has a requirement for do you need quotes, do you need bids, do you need purchasing to get involved and start looking at this. So you can see last year we actually issued 2,447 purchase orders for a total of $78 million. So purchasing is very busy. They work with all departments, and they work a lot with utilities and also Department of Property Management. On top of that, we use the purchasing card, and that is managed from the purchasing department. So the purchasing card is much like what you would think of as a credit card. So we can use this purchasing card to help be more efficient and not have to go through the purchase order process, but we can use the purchasing card. Some of those benefits are their emergency type of field purchases, cost savings to gain those efficiencies, but more importantly, you also get a rebate. And last year, our rebate amount was over $105,000. That is money coming back into the districts based on the amount of spend that we used on the purchasing card. So it's actually money that's earned just by using this more efficient model. So the next item I want to talk to you about is utilities in NSCUD, North Sumter County Utility Dependent District. So under our portfolio here, we also do manage the utilities. So the utility systems north of State Road 44. So there are four of them. So the Village Center Service Area, what we commonly refer to as VCSA, is owned by the Village Center Community Development District. And that serves Lake County and District 1. So then we have the next one is Little Sumter Service Area, or what we call LSSA. And that is also owned by the Village Center Community Development District, VCCDDD. A lot of tongue-tied on all these type of acronyms that we use. But that service area serves districts 2, 3, and 4. So you can see a little bit bigger than VCSA, a little over 12,600 residential counts compared to the 9,200 in VCSA. So going down, we now have North Sumter Utility and the Villages Water Conservation Authority. That is owned by NSCUD, and we commonly refer to as NSU and VWCA. Of course, we would use an acronym. So those serve District 5 through District 8. So NSU is the biggest utility that we have that has over 23,000 residential accounts. And then a little bit south of that, you have Central Sumter Utility Company, also owned by NSCUD, CSU. And then you have the Sumter Water Conservation Authority. That's the irrigation that is owned privately, that is not owned by NSCUD. And those serve districts 9, 10, 11, and about just under 14,000 residential accounts there. So those are the 4 utilities north of 44. 2 of them owned by Village Center, and 2 of them owned by NSCUD. So NSCUD, what is that? North Sumter County Utility Dependent District. So it was established through Chapter 189 as a dependent district. The board members were initially selected by Sumter County Board of County Commissioners, and they all serve at staggered terms. And currently all members of the NSCUD board have been selected through qualified elections, and 1 member from each is from each district, 5 through 10, and then 1 at-large seat. So what do? So NSCUD, they provide water, wastewater, and reclaimed water services for the community development districts 5 through 8 and all the commercial properties. And those are funded through user fees. So that's how they operate. There's fees for utilization of the water and the sewer and the irrigation, and that's what funds the operations. And those 2 are NSU and VWCA, the irrigation arm. They also have solid waste collections. That is Sumter Sanitation, and they serve CDDs, Community Development Districts 1 through 11. And once again, that is an enterprise fund, all funded through user fees. So south of 44, what do we get into? So south of 44, the utility systems are privately owned, and that is the South Sumter Utility Company and Finney Water Conservation Authority, SSU and FWCA. Naturally, we would have an acronym. They serve districts 12, phase 1 and 2 on the west side, and they have about 2,600 residential accounts. And then we have South Sumter Utility Company and Southeast Wildwood Water Conservation Authority, once again privately owned, and that serves District 12 and Phase 2 and 3, and District 13 Phase 1, 2, and 3. And at build out, probably have just under 12,000 residents. So these are the privately held utilities south of 44, but remember, the utility and billing and customer service within the Village Center, we do the billing for that as well. So it's all one succinct bill coming out of our office that has all your amenity fees and your utilities, garbage, et cetera on there. So I want to talk to you about sanitation, because sanitation just went through a big transition this past year. So we wanted to bring you up to speed on how that all transitioned. So NSCUD, North Sumter County Utility Dependent District, purchased Sumter Sanitation in December 2012. It services Marion County, Sumter County, and Fruitland Park areas of the villages. And at the time of the purchase, there were about 39, just under 40,000 residential and 200 commercial accounts. Today, we serve about just under 54,000 residential accounts and about 290 commercial accounts. So the amount of waste collected in 2019 kind of broke out like this. Solid waste was about just under 30,000 tons, recycling about 11,000, brush just under 6,700 tons, for a total of about 40,000 tons. What we estimate, we're looking probably around 48,000 tons in the coming years, and what we look at our budget, how we propose our solid waste disposal. So we do this through Sumter Sanitation Fund through NSCUD, and we do contract with Jacobs. And Jacobs has 11 solid waste rear loading trucks, 6 recycling rear loading trucks, some commercial loading trucks, and then a bulk white good truck. So where does my solid waste go? So this past year, NSCUD actually engaged in a long-term solid waste plan, and part of that solid waste plan was to utilize Covanta. And so what is Covanta? Covanta is an energy from waste plant. So it is being utilized where all our garbage, sanitation, whether it be recycling, yard waste, household residential waste, it all goes to the Covanta plant in Lake County, and then it actually then is reused or recycled, so to speak, or it is created energy from the waste. So it actually goes back on the grid to create electricity. So we felt like this was a better alternative. This was a over a year-long process, engaging all the residents, the board, to come up with this long-term solid waste plan, and one that the NSCUD board has been very pleased with, and very pleased with the outcome and the residential support and conversation they've had to go into a more of a a greener technology as far as putting energy back on the grid. I appreciate your time today. And with that, I would just like to say, have a great day and thank you.